I'm John.
I'm Jess.
And we're DwnShifters. This is our first video blog, and we've been on the road for 1 week now, having left Brooklyn, New York, and now in the sticks of rainy Virginia. So we wanted to talk a little bit about our experience in our first week on the road, and give a little insight on things that have been going well and things that have been challenging for us as complete newbies on the road.
Yeah, it's definitely been a big learning experience. We're going to talk about some of the experiences we've had, and then potentially go into depth about more of those down the road. For now, we
no pun intended.
Start with the first step of our journey in leaving Brooklyn.
Yeah, so it's now currently a Saturday. That's actually the first thing that you may or may not experience, is I generally don't know what day or date it is. That being said, I'm working on my own sort of personal projects now, but Jess is keeping a 9 to 5, so she usually knows the day and the date. Anyways, so last Saturday, we left Brooklyn after having lived in the van in Brooklyn for a couple of weeks. So we got to get our feet wet there, but it has been a lot different when things are unfamiliar on the road.
Yeah, we had a lot of without the sticks and bricks apartment, we still had a lot of access to resources that we don't now have access to, and then we also hadn't necessarily shed our Brooklyn lifestyle. We still went to a lot of our favorite spots, and with the energy being we don't have much more time to go to these spots, so we were asleep.
We also had sweet mustaches, both of us. So,
yeah, totally. We were sleeping in the van, so nighttime was in the van, but we weren't spending a whole lot of our day in the van. Now we are spending a whole lot of our day in the van.
All of the time.
And a lot of that is because we're still learning about pacing ourselves from a travel perspective, and we're doing this in November, so the weather is chilly.
It's a little nipply.
Yeah. The further we get down south, we've started having milder weather, but we had some pretty chilly nights as we were leaving Brooklyn. And so actually our first stop was a pretty cold night.
It was cold, yeah. So I mean, we've been skirting somewhere between like the mid-20s to the upper 40s over the last week, and so that's been a challenge in itself. We're basically completely electric based in the van. We have electric radiant floors. And we rely almost entirely on our solar panels for most of what we do in the van. So wintertime, short sun days has been tricky as a jumping off point for the trip. We'll talk more about all that as we go on over the course of our vlogging. But our first stop was a short trip from Brooklyn to a spot just outside of Toms River. It's a place that we found on iOverlander, which is a pretty helpful app that you can use to find places to stay. We're finding that it so far in this area, just because I've heard that the East Coast is a little bit harder to find places to boondock, that we're finding like a lot of parking lots and Walmarts on iOverlander, but we did find a couple of gems so far using that app. The first of which was called Double Trouble State Park in New Jersey.
Yeah, that brought us closer to the coast, which was cool. We've both lived in Brooklyn for upwards of a decade, and you're on water, or you're on an island, the Long Island, and near the island of Manhattan, but you don't spend a whole lot of time by the water, and so we headed towards the coast to drive down it for New Jersey, for a trip through New Jersey, and Double Trouble State Park is really close to, like, I guess marshlands and what appears to be cranberry country, exactly. So it was flat and kind of sandy and piney, and
just what we were looking for. Yeah,
and very, very cold.
Yeah, it was chilly. We saw our first wildlife of the trip there, which was great. A large coyote on the crest of a bridge, which was kind of nice to see at dusk. A little terrifying for us country folk, or city folk rather. But it was cool. That spot was great. It was a nice way to start the trip. It felt totally safe, and it was really quiet, and had a good night there. It was just on the chilly side. From there, we stayed in New Jersey, and we cruised down to one of the items on our list was a couple of ghost towns that are in New Jersey. One of them is called Batso Village, Batso, and it's been turned into a state park. So it wasn't particularly terrifying. Somewhat educational, however. It was an old mining town, like so many ghost towns are. But I think it was maybe a little bit too kind of shiny and polished for what we were hoping for.
Growing up on the East Coast, I would say I was familiar with it as a historical site, something where the buildings have been maintained in a certain way that you can still walk through and see what would have been the old general store and information about pricing and what would have been sold. You could see the mill and see labels on different tools that you may or may not be familiar with. There were some old houses of the folks who would have lived in that town, helping to take care of the estate, I believe, or do work that was connected to those mills or the estate. And I even saw little bits and pieces that made me think that they might have historical tours on certain days or times of the year. But it was not a super popular place. Again, it's
not in November.
Kind of cold and gray.
Good time to go.
I saw someone fishing, and otherwise I think there was a family photo being taken in one of the houses.
Yeah.
And maybe some hikers and campers coming through.
But
still pretty light on people. But we were excited too because when we got there, it was connected to a parks visitor center, and when we found out there were campgrounds, we wanted to look into those campgrounds and see if we could get less boondocking and more potential amenities from a campsite.
To grill. We wanted a campfire. Yeah. That unfortunately did not work out. We ended up spending most of the afternoon going to these various campgrounds to look for a spot. Once we found one, we made it back to the ranger station, only to learn that the location that we had picked was not pet friendly, and we have a dog. So that took basically all of the work of finding a place for that night off the table, and it was about 4 p.m. So that left us with no place to park for the night. So this is sort of the thing I think that most people, certainly that we were concerned about, is where are you going to stay? And it has been something that has taken a lot more time and research than I think that we had anticipated in some ways. I think we knew that it was going to be something that we would have to, when we talked about the journey that we were going on, we talked about the fact that we wouldn't know where we were staying every day, which is part of the excitement. But so far, we haven't really honed the skill of finding places quickly. So we did end up kind of driving around after that for a while, and then ended up finding a really nice spot that was just a canoe launching area, parking lot off the side of one of the small highways that we were on. It ended up being a great place. It was exactly what we needed. It was a total win to find this place after feeling like we had a lot of frustration of driving around all day looking for this campground. That didn't end up working out.
Yeah, it was quiet. Nobody else was there.
It was cold.
It was cold.
Yeah.
It was wooded. You could hear cars, but nothing was really loud or anything.
Yeah.
It was what we needed.
It was perfect. So then the following day, we were going to leave New Jersey and make our way to Delaware. So on the way, we stopped at No, it's not on my list. But it's on Fort Mott State Park, which was an old battery. You can see a lovely nuclear plant in the distance. It's a cool stop. I think we both have enjoyed stopping at all of the kind of World War I, World War II stuff that we come across in our past travels, so it was nice to see. And then we went from New Jersey into Delaware, and then stayed at Blackbird State Forest, which was maybe an hour into Delaware. And this place was great. We found this on iOverlander, and it's a free camping place. It is hunting season, so most of the people that were staying there, they don't have a lot of spots, but most of the ones that were in use were for people using deer stands.
And we were there during weekdays, so I was working during 9 to 5 hours, and we're not really getting a whole lot of sun later than that. So we weren't probably going to use the hiking trails a whole lot, but they weren't really accessible because of hunting right
They're
now,
closed,
which
actually.
is also something we're learning about. It's like, where are people hunting? What areas of the country are people using to hunt in right now?
Right. So, and we both need hunter's orange jackets.
Yeah. So a little safer with some brighter colors on.
Yeah. Blackbird State Forest was great. I'd recommend that spot to anyone. Again, it was a free campground. We did get to grill that night on the fire, which was awesome. And it was a little bit warmer than it had been because we were, I don't know why, but it was in the 40s, which felt great. Following day, staying in Delaware, we followed the coast down to Delaware Seashore State Park. And this is one of those places that I think neither Jess nor I are particularly interested in staying at.
Not what we envisioned.
Not what we envisioned at all. This place was a little bit more established in the sense that it had like some RV hookups and bathroom and laundry facilities. But honestly, it was kind of nice for us to have that stop, just because this is also new to us. It just felt good to do laundry, take showers, and all the rest of that in an established place. And first night we were like one of 3 or 4 people that were even in this whole park, which was great.
Yeah, I think the piece that isn't what we had envisioned was that it didn't feel like a park. It didn't feel like you could walk right into trees or a lot of natural habitat. But there were some interesting components to it as well, like the bridge. Yeah,
there's a really beautiful bridge, actually, that you're basically camped under. It was pretty dramatic, and I'll show photos of it on the video, or I should be saying, as you can see here. So it was interesting. Kind of felt like you were just boondocking in the city a little bit with the infrastructure, but
it brought us a lot of wins too.
Wind, yeah, but joy. Shower brought joy.
And power.
And power. Yeah, so something we haven't really talked about is when we left Brooklyn, it was it's been overcast. Days have been short. Sun is low. Our van is entirely run by solar panels, at least the back of the van, and that presents challenges when there isn't a lot of sun. So we left Brooklyn with very little power stored to use for heating, for hot water, or anything. And so it was nice to stop there because we could plug in. We had a bright day. We stayed 2 days there just so we could charge up the following day because it was going to be sunny. And then we left with like full batteries, which just felt almost as nice as the shower did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's something we've talked about, is like that added a level of security personally that we hadn't had since the last time we'd had a full battery, which was in Brooklyn. So just to be able...
But we hadn't in Brooklyn even for a while because the weather had been so crappy.
Well, crappy weather, but also, again,
buildings.
Like we've already, by moving south, gained probably a half hour of sunlight, and it's not a whole lot, and it's not very strong, but it's more than was available in Brooklyn. And we're also
no shadows.
Yeah, we're not in the shadows of taller buildings, which even on the sunniest days in Brooklyn, we would definitely find ourselves chasing sun around some of the places where we were parked because we needed it. We needed it desperately.
We needed it bad. Yeah. So a good stop. Something I don't think either of us intend to do all the time. But it was a good stop for us to just kind of like, keep on our feet and recharge in multiple ways. And then last night, this takes us to last night, and we were in a campground that was in Virginia, just north of Shenandoah Forest and in the George Washington National Park. And it was a great stop. So it was something that we had actually intended to go to another location that a free spot that we found on iOverlander. But when we got there, because it was a Friday, it was already packed by the time we got there. So this is something that we're learning. Maybe don't travel if you're looking to try to get somewhere on a Friday, because I think a lot of people that are doing the weekend thing might beat you there.
Yeah.
So finding
stuff
a place
might already be locked in, even at this time of year when people may be doing outdoor recreation in these places
hunting.
A little bit less or in a different way.
Yeah.
Weekends are still we're seeing popularity in like fishing spots or hunting spots.
Yeah. Moonshining. Yeah. So Elizabeth Furnace Family Campground was nearby this iOverlander location that we attempted to do to stay at, and it was fun. It was quiet. Something that we are actually enjoying. While the weather has been tough and the sun has been short, the places that we've been going have been very sparsely populated, which has been great. With the exception of that one spot on a Friday, which I'm sure is probably the reason why we weren't able to stay there, it's been really easy to get into parks and camping sites midweek. So I think that's something to keep in mind for us and for you if you're attempting to do this crazy thing. And that wraps up the week. Was there anything you wanted to say about Elizabeth Furnace Family Campground?
No. I don't think so. We got access to fire again, so we were able to grill once more, which was nice.
Yep, the fire is always fun. Something actually though that I hadn't considered is that when you have a campfire, just like when you're camping, it's like the van smells like a campfire because like your clothes are in the van, so
your clothes,
it's like
your hair, your everything.
Everything is very very campfire-y. Which is kind of nice in some ways, but it does get a little old too. So think about where you're parking your van, how close you're parking your van to the fire. 'Cause I think we parked like pretty close to where we had the fire last night.
Or when your next opportunity to do laundry will be, because your clothing will come with you and bring that smell all along the road.
It's gonna tell its own story. So Jess, what do you think the winds were this first week on our journey?
Yeah, for me, I think Double Trouble was a really great way to kick everything off, even though it was incredibly chilly. It was our first experience outside of Brooklyn, and we got to walk through these sandy, shrubby trails and see just a beautiful sunset over this field, and then be slightly terrified by a coyote at dusk and just be like, this is why I wanted to do this. I wanted to have more of these kinds of experiences and see these kinds of landscapes and learn how to live in weather that's not always amenable, or that makes me have to work a little bit harder to be comfortable or safe or something like that. It's a challenge that I'm enjoying. It's definitely a challenge. But yeah, that was straight off the bat a win for me. And then Power and Shower at Delaware Seashore was another big, like you said, I think morale booster, just to have the things we need to have a little bit of security and be a little more comfortable.
Yeah, it was a recharge. It was nice. I agree. I think that other wins that we had was just finding spots on our own, not succumbing to the Walmart parking lot, which on a couple of occasions it's really tempting, and it may end up happening. It probably will. I mean, everyone I've heard stays there at some point, but it was nice to find places that we ended up actually really liked staying at on our own, that we didn't use an app for or whatever. Just kind of take that plunge. It was one thing just to park in a neighborhood that we were really comfortable with in Brooklyn, which might sound crazy to a lot of people, but it was very comfortable for us because it was our neighborhood. We felt very comfortable. But to be somewhere new, it's always a lot of things going through your mind about the newness. And actually, something that's funny is for both Jess and I is that how quiet everything is now that we've left the city is just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I've definitely gone outside and it's been so dark and so quiet, and I've heard my own heart beating faster. Like, what am I doing out here?
Yeah, like talk about creepy, right?
Yeah. Even though that's totally something that I saw and enjoyed growing up in Western North Carolina. Like, it's been a minute. Yeah.
Same. I grew up in Montana, and so I love the outdoors, and that's something for both of us why